Hi guys, how are you doing? I'm David Kusuri. Welcome to your first troubleshoot about HTML dynamic controls. In this case, I'm going to answer some questions about our first class using a select menu, HTML select menu, reading information, reading data from our table into a database. One of the most important questions that called my attention was, how can I create a simple select menu? Which options I can retrieve from a table inside a database? Well, this is very simple. The first thing we have to do is to create a table with the content, with the rows that we're going to use as options inside of menu. Let's start. I'm going to create a new database. I'm going to call it main list. And inside this database, I'm going to create a table. Well, I can call this table main list too. So I'm going to use two columns. One column is going to be used for code and the other is going to be used for description. Option code and option description. So I'm going to use virtual data types in both columns. I don't need to use float or integer. We're not going to make calculations. In this case, we only need to retrieve lines from the database in our menu, in our select HTML menu. So I'm going to use 10 characters for the code and 50 for the description. We're in Brazil, so our interface is in Portuguese, as you know. I have two files created. First one is the class. I'm going to write my PHP code here, and I'm going to put some HTML code inside the PHP code just to construct the form and the select menu control inside the PHP code and inside the form. This is going to be very interesting. So we're going to look how PHP can interact very dynamically with HTML. So the other file, index.php, is going to have the instances. So I'm going to build a new object and call the methods or functions from the class. So let's start. Let's start programming our PHP code. It's going to be something like this. And I'm going to close it, just to don't forget it at the end. And I'm going to declare my class. This class is going to be named dynamic main. Why not? So I'm going to open my class logics, and here we go. The first thing I'm going to create is a simple method or function. This function is going to be public, and the name is going to be main. I'm not going to use arguments or parameters by now. So I'm going to start my function logics, and the first thing I have to do is to create a connection to my database. In this case, I could use the class MySQLi. So let's declare a new member or a variable, and I'm going to call it connection. This is going to be a new object construction, a new object building, a new object calling from the class MySQLi. I'm going to use the parameters. The first one, as you know, is the host, the user, password, and the name of my database. So this is the local server. We're working with root. We're not using password for root. And now I'm going to use the name of my database, ManyList. My database name is ManyList. So, as you know, we can use an if-else or an or-die function, cycle or buckle, just to try to evaluate if this if this function is working right. Okay, so I'm not going to do it just to be faster and solve the questions. Now I'm going to open my PHP folder here too. And the first thing I have to do here is to import my file. What's the file? Class dynaSelect.php. You see the sentence include and the name of my file. This is going to be dynaSelect, right? .php. So I always like do it like this, and I'm going to refresh my page in here, and everything is going right just because I have no error in here. So I'm calling index, and the response is okay. But now I have built a new object from the dynamic menu class. How am I going to do this? As you know, I'm going to declare a new variable, so I can call it menu, and it's going to be a new object from the class. What's my class? It's dynamic menu. I am not going to use elements by now, and I'm going to refresh it, and the class was perfectly called. The new object was built successfully. So now I'm going to use the same variable just to instance my method. What's the name of my method? It's menu. If everything's okay, I should have no error when I refresh my page. Now that our automation is successful, I'm going to try to enforce an error. How? I'm going to use a different database name. For example, name list 1. This database doesn't exist, so if I try to update it, I'm going to have this warning. MySQLi construct. So we have HY, if this is an error, 1049 unknown database, just because this database doesn't exist in fact. So I refresh, everything is going on. Now let's build our menu. First thing I have to do is a simple query. How am I going to do this query? I can use the connection member with a new variable, and I can call this variable, I can declare it using the name query. And query is going to call connection, and connection is going to instance any query. And what is going to be this query? We're going to use a select star from our table. So what's our table? It's ManyList too. So I recommend something. Sometimes we're working with very complex queries, so I recommend to test the query inside the database client. I'm going to go to SQL, and I'm going to run this query. It's working. I have nothing, I have no lines inside my table, but I'm gonna have it, don't worry. Using SQL, I'm going to insert 2 lines with the insert query. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to write something, anything, 2 courses, for example. JavaScript. Oh, this is not camel case. And Node.js. So I'm going to run it. The query was executed successfully. Now I'm going to run my select query in here. And now that our query is running, excuse me, I was just moving the camera, adjusting my camera. Now that our query is running, we're going to keep on building our dynamic name. So now we have to build a simple array, and we have to use a flux control, and in this case we could use the while flux control. So we can do this. Why I can call the query execution by a new member or variable, calling an array construction method called fetchAsset. I can open a cycle flux control logic saying this. We got 2 columns in our table construction structure. And we can declare 2 new variables using these names, fields names, and we're going to associate each one with the member results, just because results is going to be responsible to retrieve the rows from the table after executing the console or the query. So I got to specify what field is going to come the line from, or in this case, what field or column is going the information come from. Excuse me, I am having problems with my little camera. And here we're going to write the column names, just because I want to retrieve the information, the data which is into each one of these columns. Well, in this point I could make a print or an echo of the information that I'm retrieving from the table, but now I have to build my select name. And how am I going to do this? Well, I can write HTML code inside my PHP code, and it's very fun. In this case, I'm going to write a code for building a simple form with a select name. So I can use a print or an echo, just like this. I'm going to use my print. this print, I'm going to create a form with a post method, and the action, I'm really not going on it any action, just because this is a sample, okay? But I'm going to write it anyway. So I have my form, and I'm going to write my select name. Select name, and the name for my select is going to be menu list. So now that I have my form header and my menu start, and I have my connection to the database, and I have my query, and I have my flux control, specifically a while flux control, I'm going to use the options. I'm going to write the options and how I'm going to do it. I'm going to use print inside the while, just because I need that every time the query finds a new line, a new option be constructed. So what I'm going to do is this. While the resource variable be able to retrieve information from an array using the variable query, I declare the retrieving of the lines inside the table, specifically in the two columns, using these two variables. And now I'm going to write the options. It's a simple HTML tag, and I'm going to write only once, just once, and the value for my option, or for each option in this case, is going to be the code of the course. And here I'm going to print the description. So inside my select menu, I should be able to read specifically the lines that I have in my table. I'm going to execute this simple select query. So I should be able to read JavaScript and Node.js. Now I have to close it. I have to close my menu. And what I'm going to do, outside of the while environment, okay, and I have a little mistake in here. I have to write this print inside the while environment, just because each time that a new line is found inside the table, a new option must be printed. So, excuse me, sorry for that. It's ready. Now, outside the while environment, I mean the while flux control scope, I'm going to close my select, and I'm going to close my form too. Using print. So I will close my select, and I will close my form. Why am I doing this? If I write this inside the while flux control code, the cycle is going to close the select after reading the first line. So I'm not going to be able to retrieve every line inside the table. So now let's refresh this and look at this. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. What I am doing is just retrieve information from my database using an HTML menu. So I can use the value which is really inside each option to make an insert operation or any other SQL operation. So I can retrieve information from the database, from the table, dynamically using any kind of control. Select, checkbox, ready box, input type text, input type date, and any kind of HTML font control. So guys, I hope this information be useful for you, and thank you one more time. Have a nice code. Bye bye.